Thank you very much, Matt. Right, okay, question time, very briefly. I'm keen for you to all go out and take a seat to drive some cars. So can we have Senan, Matt and Jonathan? Before we have questions, who went out and drove a car over lunch who had not driven an electric car before? Okay. What did you think?
Very surprised. I drove the Kangoo van.
Yeah.
And, I'd driven like the diesel version before, and it was very smooth running.
Yeah.
My left foot was constantly looking to clutch.
Right.
But I soon got over that as we drove along the road, and it was a very smooth drive, very relaxing drive.
So you were absolutely changed, your preconceptions?
Very much.
Good.
Very much. Yeah, very much indeed.
Okay. Who else put their hand up? Have they driven one? Over there. Can we just very quickly see what you thought?
So I arrived very late. I only had to drive about 3 o'clock there on the way in. I had to go, you know, the open Renault with no windows, no doors?
Yes, Twizy, yeah.
Lovely wee vehicle down Queen's Island on a March day. It was some excitement with it. The rest of them all tend to look like petrol engines.
Right.
Whereas it's got a wee bit of flair to it.
But your preconceptions about electric cars, have they been changed?
It was lovely.
Well, there we go. It was lovely. That will be the quote we use. Okay, so any questions for our panel, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, let me kick off then by asking you, Jonathan, why aren't we spending more on battery research and technology? Because if we don't, the Chinese and the Americans and the Germans will beat us to it. I feel very passionate about this.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's an apocryphal tale or not, but apparently the lithium-ion battery was not invented in Japan, it was not invented in Germany, it was not invented in China, it was invented here in the UK. And we were slightly slow getting off the mark patenting, thank you. Patenting it, and yeah, other people reap the reward. The honest answer to your question is that we are investing significantly in battery technology. We in OLEV are putting in that 82 million I mentioned, and a chunk of that is going on batteries. But you know, there are all sorts of other people in this field as well in the UK, and you know, there's always more that can be done. But I think we have a good story to tell, because it is a technology, going back to our history on lithium, that we're very good at in this country. So we need to make sure we keep ourselves there.
Okay, thank you. Question there at the back.
Yes, first of all, I have this almost uncontrollable urge to sing the theme tune from Titanic, but I promise I won't. All right. David Greaves from Schneider Electric. Got a question for Jonathan, and it's on the latest funding announcements from OLEV, the subsidies, etc. And it's about the complete lack of funding or support for workplace charging in the new announcement, where there was some facility to do that under PIPs. I understand that we're talking about government money here, and that there could be an issue with funding private projects. But is it really private projects? We have a lot of car manufacturers and other businesses that are looking to put extensive charging facilities in at their dealerships and in retail environments where the public have access. But there is no facility for them to attract any form of subsidy under the latest announcement. Just interested to hear from OLEV what your views are on that, and if there are any plans to maybe include it in the future.
Yeah, it's a very fair challenge, and thank you for it. The issue is a simple one around state aid. We, through complex legal agreements, managed to get around that with the PIP program. You're quite right. So when local authorities are giving money to private sector bodies, you I was going to say get round, but that's not quite right. The state aid rules that apply to us don't apply at the local level. So there's that additional freedom. I need to be very careful about what I say on record here. So don't quote me.
Please don't.
But we are making money available to local authorities. ... You can take that away. We are leaving that to one side. We are also, we are providing funding for domestic charge points. Now, if you buy a fleet car, we will give you 75% off a domestic charge point. Your company car driver will do quite nicely. And the plug-in car grants apply to a lease car, to a fleet car, to a privately bought car equally. So you are right to identify that there are issues around workplace charging. And despite what I've said about state aids, it is something we are reflecting on internally, and I make absolutely no promises whatsoever, and I don't intend to sit here and answer on this in a year's time or 2 years' time, but it is something that we are looking at and we are thinking about seriously, because there are big wins. One last point, sorry, a bit of a ramble. You can, where charge points are publicly accessible, there are cases that can be made for funding. So sticking it in a workplace car park is probably not quite going to get us across the line. But if it's in one of the sort of hybrid spaces that's close to a business but also publicly accessible, we all know the sort of spaces, then potentially money is available. So it's not an absolutely closed door, and I'd encourage you to go out there and think creatively, because there are opportunities.
Anybody else? Gentleman here.
Given that electric cars are now well on their way, we know that targets are achievable, how does the panel feel with respect to hydrogen fuel cell vehicles? Will the target for introducing them into the infrastructure be met? And do you see hydrogen fuel cell vehicles overtaking electric cars in the future?
It's a stepping stone. It always has been that first come electric vehicles, first we get consumers ready for the big change in propulsion, and then comes hydrogen. Hydrogen, realistically, is much, much further away. Great strides are being made. But for the long term, the 300 miles, the 400 miles, hydrogen is better. And for the urban stuff, electric is fine. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely agree with what you say there. I think what we're likely to see, OLEV is technology neutral. So we're not saying, everyone, let's wait for hydrogen, or everyone, it's got to be a plug-in electric vehicle or nothing. We are committed to exploiting all the opportunities that are out there. I think what we expect to see is fragmentation. Sounds like a negative word. I don't mean it that way. But we will see different vehicles for different purposes, and for sales reps who need to be ploughing up and down the motorways, they will be willing in the short to medium term to pay a premium potentially for a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle up front. And so there'll be that sort of vehicle for that sort of purpose. There'll be other sorts. We've heard some fascinating things from Newt Cargo here. Different vehicles serving different purposes, and that's exactly what we expect to see.
Okay. Final question then.
Hello, Martin Hale, ABB, Rapid and Fast Charging Infrastructure. Just a question for all the panel. A technology that's being missed by funding and by what's currently being installed. And by the way, very well done, fantastic across the Northern Ireland, what you're doing here, it's really great. It is a sweet spot that makes good use of a limited power supply but still charges really quickly. And I just wanted to, going across the panel, how much plans there were to consider this type of charging, and that's typically 20 kilowatts. So it's not the 50 kilowatt, which is probably only 20% of the UK can take that sort of power. And it's not the 3 or 7 kilowatt, which is slower for 8-hour charging, but the sweet spot in the middle, which can charge an electric vehicle from 30% to 80% in only 30 minutes. And it's small, it's very easy to, it's good value, about half the price of Rapid. It's much smaller, and it can use this limited power supply. I just wondered if there was much knowledge about that, and if you were going to incentivize businesses such as restaurants, places that people go typically as a destination, half an hour, where they can fully charge rather than a token charge, and then go back from those sorts of destinations.
We use your standard sort of trickle charge at the moment, because our vehicles are out. They come back probably once or twice to reload during the day, and when they come back they just plug in and get a small top up, go out and do their round and come back, and then they charge overnight. That actually would be probably quite interesting for us, for those sort of middle of the day charges. Depends what model we go on in terms of our operational model moving forward, but yeah, I mean, we would look into that for sure. We're technology agnostic as well. We just use what's best at the time, and actually, frankly, what's cheapest for us, because we don't have the latest whiz-bang lithium batteries, because we don't need it. We don't do the range. We're very central. Now that may change going forward, but no, it's interesting.
That does sound like a significant game changer, because the big issue is just extending your range as much as you can. And if you can top up, and 30 minutes is not a big deal, and go from 30 to 80%, then your range is almost effectively doubled. And if you can do that several times during the day, then you get new and urgent possibilities for electric cars. So this is something, yes, that would need to be looked at very carefully indeed.
I think maybe just to say, Martin, that the standard charger that's going in across Northern Ireland and across the rest of Ireland is 20 kilowatts. It's 20 kilowatts AC. So the idea of whether a 20 kilowatt charger is something that we should or shouldn't have, we're quite comfortable with it. We put in 20 kilowatts, 22 kilowatts AC to suit the Renault, the three-phase cars. As I said to earlier people, we put them in, and the same philosophy up here, double-headed. So two 22s means that every point has 44 kilowatts. So if the motor industry at some future point decides it doesn't like three-phase charging, that it's going to just go for standard charging or DC charging, yes, we have a cost of charging them, but we don't have to dig up the road again. We could actually replace every point in Northern Ireland that has a charger, every point in the Republic, with some minor exceptions where we have in some long-term car parks, has 44 kilowatts of electricity supply available to it. So whether we put that in as two 22s AC, whether it goes in as a 20 kilowatt DC, or whether it goes in as a 50 kilowatt DC, really, there'll be a cost of changing it, but other than that, it'll be, what are the cars? What's that? Our view as, basically as a utility, was that we don't like the idea of digging a road or anywhere else up more than once. So we decided once we did it, we're future-proofed. And we were quite happy that that's also the philosophy that's been adopted in Northern Ireland.
Okay, time.
Can I make two very quick points?
Sorry.
Beg your pardon. First one, OLEV funding is available for all types of charge points within reason. So there are packages available to fund the 2022 kilowatt charge points. First point. Second point, we expect to see domestic charging continuing to be extremely important as the market grows, and domestic charge points, the trickle charger type points are suitable there. So I wouldn't want anyone to leave the room thinking that the lower kilowattage points are kind of redundant. They're absolutely not. Charging overnight or charging on your workplace, those charge points work perfectly.
Right, please join me in thanking our panel. What we've achieved collectively today has been great, and it's really, really, really exciting for me to have been a small part of all this. And I reiterate what I said earlier on, that this is the perfect blueprint to see how this works in Northern Ireland and takes the whole electrification of road transport forward. I expect great things for you, and I stand here and make a commitment that I will support you for as long as it takes to get this right. I think we should also put our hands together and thank Irene for setting up the conference. Please remember, there's still cars downstairs, still chance to drive not just one, but maybe 3 or 4. Then at polite dinner parties, you could say, I haven't just driven one electric car, I have driven a raft. Think of that. It's been an enormous pleasure to be a small part of this. Ladies and gentlemen, have a safe journey. Thank you all very much indeed.